The Maserati 250F, probably one of the most famous Formula One cars, Grand Prix cars of the 50s, is well represented in history. And with slot cars, you can see I've got three different ones here. First off, up front here is about a 1954 250F Maserati by Strombecker. You can see the chassis setup and motor gearing. It runs quite well. I'll do a little test on the track a little later, but right now just want to take a look. So I did a little cleaning up and a bit of a paint job and such on them, decals, but a decent model. A little stubbier, a little thicker sort of car than the one that is most famous. This one is MRC. Did a fair bit of work on this one because the mirror comes clear all the way down to the body, so I had to paint that. Not quite a match, should paint the rest of the car. Did a lot of work on the figure too, because he was quite blobby, so had to trim him up a fair bit. And yeah, the chassis underneath, a little bit of weight front and back, but all of the motor, gear components, wheels, everything are all kind of plugged into the body. No separate chassis on there. But still, you know, it does all right. And again, when you race light cars against light cars, you know, it's all still fun. And then last but not least that I've got is I have the Scalextric Classic. Came a little while ago. And let me just open this up. Beautiful, beautiful model. The detail's incredible. What I really liked about the Scalextrics, and still do, full cockpit, full driver, lots of detail inside, showing, you know, the driver all the way in and all the details, gauges, the whole works. And then the outside, nicely detailed, nicely sorted out, beautiful car. And again, it's a full body. So not just a chassis plugged in underneath. It does have a magnet. But again, you can, you know, I know a lot of people tune these up for wood track racing, but I keep them as mint as possible. That's kind of my thing with slot cars, is keep them as originally intended. And a lot of them are for plastic trackers, which is what I run. So there you go. And the same with these. You know, I've tried to fix them up, modify them a little bit, but tried to keep them as true to the original intent and how they were put together by the manufacturer. Okay, so next we'll do a little road test. First up is the Strombecker Maserati 250F. So this is replicating a version that was around 1954, I believe. This was produced by Scalextric in the early 60s. So again, as mentioned before, you know, it does have a separate chassis, and it just snaps into the body. So not too sophisticated like the cars at the time, but we'll give it a go. So this is running at 14 volts, kind of, you know, what these were rated for. The car is good and lively, actually has good pep at that voltage. So good fun. I always, when working on these cars, I always update them with urethane. I make my own molds and make the tires for just about everything I have. So anyways, highly recommend it. Again, plastic track, and again, I like the old stuff. So here we have the MRRC. I'll have to look up, maybe I'll put it some text showing what those letters stand for. But anyways, a car produced in the 60s, MRC started back when, and definitely more toy-like most in the time, but unique compared to the other ones, it has steering. So they always refer this to Ackerman steering, so I don't know exactly, you know, what makes it Ackerman steering as opposed to just steering. But there we go. We'll give it a shot, see how it goes. Definitely a tougher car to drive because it really has a tendency to de-slide. So you can't really push it. This is why I have weights in this car, trying to get it balanced. So there we go. A little tricky to drive. The proportions are not as accurate as the Scalextric, as you'll see. The driver sits up much higher. That cockpit seems to be higher than the authentic one was. But anyways, it's a challenge to drive. So yeah, the other two are a little easier going. Scalextric. Unlike the other two that we took a look at, this one is front engine. So it does have a front motor with a long drive shaft. And that's how they get the full driver and cockpit. The drive shaft does go between the driver's leg, just like in reality. So I always like when a slot car replicates the real thing. And I really like fly cars and such because they locate the motor where they're really supposed to be. So pretty cool. So here, let's give it a go. So this does have urethanes. This also has the advantage of a magnet, and also it's much more to scale than the other two. So probably the better runner of the three slot cars that I have, and this one is much newer compared to the other two. The Maserati 250F is well represented in die-cast and various scales. Very popular is 1/18 scale. That's what most of my collection is, and I've tried to focus on. Keep like to like and really take a look at scale and to be able to compare one car to another in different eras and such. Now this particular one, this is the only die-cast I have of this car, and it's 1/16 scale by Polistil. An inexpensive, not highly detailed, but still quite nice. It's got working steering. It's got quite a nice interior. It's pretty simple, but does everything quite nicely done. Now, what is nice about it is that the hood does come off. Very plasticky latches and such. Not as nice as a lot of the photo etched metal pieces you get on a higher end, like an Exoto or a CMC or Cole's Model Art or any of these, which I have samples of various cars throughout there. But with a little bit of work, yeah, I did a little bit of paint and detailing on the motor, trying to get that to look a little nicer, and painting up the exhaust pipe and things. But, you know, again, tried to keep it as stock and as intended by the manufacturer. But a decent model and a great representation of a classic and very famous Grand Prix car. Now, there's some fun stuff, too. You know, I got a caricature sculpture that's quite fun and nicely detailed. And again, cartooned, very exaggerated. It looks like what's his name now? Bira, I believe. Yeah, the helmet with the checker. I probably got that name wrong. I'll have to fact check myself later. But anyways, good fun. Again, it's just a casting of it, but yeah, a little fun. About the only real cartoony thing. I usually go for a real realistic representation of cars, but sometimes it's fun just to have fun with them. I had to add a bit here because I realized when I finished diecast, I discovered I had another diecast, which is the one up front. So just to go over scale, and I'll go into this one a little more. 1/43. The slot cars are 1/32, and I only collect 1/32 slot cars. They do make 1/43 slot cars, HO. They make 1/24, but I stick to 1/32 scale, and I like to stick to scale so that I can have comparisons of like to like and see the difference in proportions and such. And then the other diecast, as mentioned before, is 1/16. So if we take a look at this one, if I can get this in front of the camera and keep it in focus. Ah, there we go. It's working. Yeah, the 1/43 diecast, nowhere near as detailed as 1/18, which is my preference, and even less detailed than the one behind here, the 1/16 one. But still, it is accurate. Proportions look really good. There's just not a whole lot of detail. There's not like a whole lot of room for detail. Even in the cockpit, not a whole lot going on. The slot car has a lot more detail going on than this one. But anyways, this is made by Brum. There's a whole load of manufacturers who make accurate die-cast 1/43rd scale. Huge collections of Formula One cars, which I'm interested in. And if you saw my previous one, I do have quite a few in my collection. And I'll kind of be chipping away at those as I feature different cars in future episodes. So when it comes to the Maserati 250F, it's the drivers. It was such a popular Grand Prix car that there was the Maserati team, but then they sold it as a customer car. Lots of different drivers. But the most famous of all who drove for Maserati themselves was Juan Manuel Fangio. And so many books on him. I've got a number here. A lot of them from the time after he retired from racing. I'm trying to find a date on here of when this book was published. Let me see. Often. Oh, can't find it. But anyway, an early edition. Quite nicely done. And true to these sort of books, limited color black and white photos, no color. Back then, if you're familiar with these sort of autobiography type books at the time. And lots of them came out by various authors and such. So we got one here, another one. Oh, let me see. Yeah, my camera's floating away on me here. There we go. And then more recently, Canadian author Gerald Donaldson did a lot of very excellent biographies of various drivers, and this one is no exception on Fangio. Again, lots of text, and again, mostly black and white photos, and you'll find a lot of those photos will feature him in the 250F, as well as when he drove for Ferrari, and even more famous, the Mercedes team. Lots of other books featuring this profile publication series. Yeah, they've got hundreds of these little books all published quite some time ago, one featuring the 250F. This one I took with me to Lime Rock, and they had a vintage race, and Sterling Moss was there, and I actually got him to sign that, if you could see that here. And this very tiny autograph that he had. And it was quite funny when he signed something. He would start with this big flourish of his arm and hand, and then do that tiny little signature. Anyways, nice color section. You can see where the earlier 55, quite bulky and really streamlined out in 57. So really nice book with lots of details and facts. If you're familiar with Haynes, the workshop manuals, they have done a series of famous race cars, and they do break it down. They kind of give a history, which is very nice. And what I quite enjoyed, because I go to a lot of vintage races, they took one of these cars that somebody has refurbished, tried to be as original as possible, but they fix the car up and take it to vintage races. So they got super detailed shots of the reconstruction and the the working, the maintenance of keeping these cars running in vintage races. And I've seen this car in many vintage races I've gone to. Most recently, Nürburgring in Germany had several Maseratis raced by various drivers, and they did have a Fangio one there. Oh, this one here. Yeah, they had this one exactly. Fantastic. So many drivers had driven this car in the past. But when looking at books, collecting books, and if you saw my other video, I got quite the library. It's always been an interest of mine. The real car, not just slot cars and such. I really pick things that have a racing history, that have some significance. And here's an early, it says 1958, but it is the 1957 season. and it features a lot of the Maserati 250F, and that season was particularly famous for Fangio, particularly at the Nürburgring. He had beaten the Ferraris, even though he was quite a bit behind. But he said it was one of the most stirring drives he had ever done. And it's well documented in his biographies and such. But if I can take a look here. Yeah, anyway, you can see, even though this book was published in 1958, it's got some wonderful color photographs as well as black and white. Here's Fangio. And this is at the Nürburgring in Germany. And how here he is with his arm up as he crosses the finish line in first place, even though the two Ferraris of Hawthorne and Collins were well ahead. But he did an amazing all-out jump. Here he is at Monaco. Fabulous looking car and that driver. Exactly like the Scalextric version. So nicely done. The driver, everything is beautifully replicated. So very cool. Lots of other books, some more recent books, Formula One in camera. They have all the different seasons. You can go through each season and look up. Well, this one's more arbitrary pictures with some dialogue on them. So here's the 250F. Not sure which the driver is here in this one. But again, so many drivers drove this car. Here we go up the hill. Beautiful shots. Anyways, very nice book. And this is a very cool series, Formula One car by car. And they do each decade. So they do the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. But this one is particularly nice. Here is Fangio in a 12-cylinder. Usually the car is best known in the 6-cylinder version, but they did do a 12. And they got that double air scoop on the front hood. Very quite unique. But here you can go, what's nice about this, you can go to each year. And now let me go to 57. And there we go. If you, 57. And we go to the official Maserati team. Tons of pictures of each driver who drove it throughout this particular year. And you can see there's so many of them here. Very cool. And there's that, I think this one's silver as opposed to the white one we saw. It could be white, depends on the, oh, there's the white one down here with the blue stripes. But very, very cool. I mean, you can really get into the history, and it's such a rich history on this car because it was so popular and used so much, and there was a number of them built because there were customer cars as well. When I was at Nürburgring, there is probably 5 or 6 of them just at that event. So very, very nice. So here we have sim racing. So another dimension. From collecting slot cars and driving them on a track. Now you kind of get yourself right into the vehicle and get a sense of what steering input and you know, competing on a track and how that would be like. So let's see if we can give this a go. A full grid of Maseratis here. Just do a couple laps and see how I make out, if I can make a couple. Oh, little bump there. So the great thing with sim racing, you get that force feedback on the steering wheel. You can feel the rumble strips, you can feel the traction, and bumps if you do hit another car. And these old cars with the thin tires, you can really get them sliding. So I'm throwing into the turns a bit, get the back end out. Such thin tires on go. Turn. Oh, losing traction. Car beside me, gotta give him room. Oh, he'll knock me off. Oh, he almost knocked me off anyway. One more lap if I make it. Lot of steering input. If you had a higher end sim, you'd be able to get a great big steering wheel like this, so that you really get the feel and the steering input of the real thing. Keep going. Oh, over the curves. Over the curves. Shortcuts. Alright, we'll see how. Maybe here I'm going to do another lap or not. Get carried away with this. Certainly immersive. Oh no, it's in the wrong gear! I shifted in the first. That was a second gear turn. Oh, I had a fastest lap. That's good. I can't stop now. Oh, I bumped the car. Took my back end out. Oh no. There we go. I think I'll pack it in. But you get an idea. Okay, we'll wrap this up as I just go through a few more pictures here. These were shots that I took the first time I saw a Maserati 250F was at Watkins Glen. Highly recommend checking out the vintage races there. They're spectacular. You get lots of great stuff. And to see the cars and, well, hear them, and the whole sensation of them racing out on a track is well worth it. Anyways, I'll wrap this up, and I will prepare the next car and do another video.